Just a few moments, I'm going to be speaking with Andrew Rosenberg, DC. He is a chiropractor, a physiologist, functional medicine expert, methylation researcher, and director of Red Mountain Natural Clinic in Boise, Idaho. And we're going to be talking about what is food noise really? I mean, is it mental, hormonal, neurological? And what are some ways that we can actually shut that noise off naturally? We've heard a lot of talk about GLP-1s and all of the things and how that shuts off food noise, but let's talk about how we can naturally shut that off. And we'll be discussing that with the amazing Andrew Rosenberg.
It's a beautiful chaos, this roller coaster ride. The ups, the downs are spinning all around inside. It's a beautiful chaos. Sometimes I love, sometimes I hate. Have to pause, renegotiate, but with gratitude I appreciate this beautiful chaos.
I'm so glad that you're with me today. I'm so excited about our discussion that we're going to be having because there's so much talk out there about food noise and GLP-1s shutting off food noise and all the things. And I'm just not a big GLP-1 fan. I would like to see more natural things. So let's first talk about what is happening in our systems. Happening, is it happening in our brain or our guts or our vagus nerve or all of the above that creates this food noise?
I think the biggest problem that people face is they don't understand or properly interpret what hungry feels like.
Mm, yeah,
Okay. When we look up hunger, if we were to define hunger, what we do is we look at symptoms of low blood sugar. That's kind of the basic medical physiologic effect of being hungry is, when you're well fed and your blood sugar's balanced and you've got a full belly, you don't feel hungry. But what does your body do when your blood sugar drops? There's 10 symptoms, 10 different symptoms that trigger when we get hungry. So being hungry happens to just be one of 10. And I'll read for you guys, I'm pulling up the list right now of what the actual symptoms are.
okay, let's hear them.
So there's quite a few, and I think a lot of people listening and a lot of your audience, would resonate with some of these. So shakiness, having a rapid heartbeat, getting sweaty, dizzy, feeling anxious for no apparent reason, having blurred vision or having your vision get worse in the moments like out minutes before you eat, but if it's been a while, just overwhelming fatigue, having a headache, and then like mood changes and being irritable, like moodiness.
Yeah. I've experienced a lot of those things. I actually struggled with hypoglycemia. So when you talk about that, I'm right there. Been there, done that, had a tunnel, felt like I was in a tunnel uh, because I was so past my time to eat.
It's annoying to have to eat, and our we like to be efficient. And
Yes.
when we skip meals, I, I'm not sure it works. Intermittent
Yeah.
fasting has value for people, um, Tammy, but I'm not sure people are healthy enough right off the get-go to actually be able to see the benefits from intermittent fasting.
Well, honestly, I don't think I was eating every 2.5 to 3 hours, and my body was used to that. And I actually now can go from 6 p.m. at night until 7 o'clock in the next morning without eating. And I would never have been able to do that before if I wasn't eating the way that I'm eating now, which is carnivore.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Carnivore is a great strategy. I'm trying to walk people off the ledge so they stop using the word diet so much.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I want you to talk about. I mean, is the carnivore diet, and is it really healthy for us? Because there's always this, oh, it's a new fad diet thing, but I don't think this is because I think this goes back to the caveman years, right? This is the way our bodies are meant to eat. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's so you're asking a really important question. And there's trends, and trends seem to make things seem more dumb than they really are, unfortunately. That's the nature of
Yeah.
a trend. It's like, is this the whole answer, or is this just like the, you know, kind of the lowest common denominator getting more popular? So
Mhm.
a lot of people think of carnivore, and the first thing they imagine is like a gigantic piece of really lean steak. And they
Right.
go, how could you possibly be healthy if that's all you eat? Okay. All right. Let's take a step back though. Okay. So the carnivore strategy, and again, I prefer the word strategy, is important in a couple of ways. First thing is it's allowing the animal to process the food toxins into something that's more valuable. So if a chicken goes and eats food scraps and bugs and stuff, and a cow's eating grass, and other animals are eating basically food we would never eat. They convert that into protein and nutrition and vitamins and minerals. And so we get the vitamins, minerals, and protein, but we don't get the other chemicals and compounds in plants that make people like have autoimmune diseases, for example, you know?
Yes.
So that's a high value. It's kind of like a filter, like all these lectins and inflammatory plants and nightshades and food allergies and all of that. That all gets processed by the animal and converted into something really useful that we get to eat in a concentrated form. So that's a really good thing for people who have a tendency to have autoimmunity. Um, the other thing I would say on the carnivore strategy is like zooming out, looking at big populations. So we've recently looked at this. So like in Europe, generally speaking, they have better food than we do. It's they win, okay, on the food competition. There's really
Yes.
not much competition. They win. Um, they
Yeah.
haven't bastardized their food. They're a little bit more, they keep a closer eye on it than we do. And so in that part of the world, the country that lives the longest, if we're going to judge which diet's the best, we might say, well, okay, fine, who lives longer than everybody else, right? Spain actually has the longest lifespan by, that beats out Italy and these other places. So Spain's currently the number one.
Okay.
Okay. And then meat per capita, Spain blows the rest of Europe away.
Wow,
So
I didn't
there's,
know that.
yep. So they have the highest meat consumption per person and they live the longest. So that must mean something. Okay. It
Yeah.
means that meat's important. And then, I think, Tammy, there's an idea that people get that, and I'm not blaming them for this, but like as they get older, their digestive system kind of slows down. And so they might eat meat and go, it doesn't sit good with me. Keep doing it, still doesn't sit well. So then they logically think that maybe meat's not good for me. They'll go on the internet and find information that said, hey, meat's not good for you. Here's why. And so then they'll reduce their intake of protein as they get older, but it's actually the worst thing that they can do.
Right, because that's where we're getting our muscle mass from is protein. That's what muscles feed on is your protein. And that's one of the first things that you start losing. Well, gosh, when women go through menopause, we lose what, 40% of our muscle mass or 30%. And then every year after that, you're losing a percentage of your muscle mass. And if you're not eating enough protein, then you're not going to be able to get yourself up out of a chair.
How much muscle you have relative to how much you weigh. You don't have to be a muscle bound, gym monkey, but you need healthy muscle mass for your frame. And that's the best marker of how well we will age. It's a true story.
Right.
So I actually think it's more important in the second half of your life. Like you could experiment, be a vegan if you want, be a vegetarian,
Yeah.
and have like your philosophy guide your food choices, or maybe you have like an animal, you have like a religiosity about it. Like there are people like that, and that's okay. But the hard science, the hard data of what does this physical body run on? It has a high demand for protein. So I think it's more important in the second half of your life to be aware of that than the first half. You can kind of goof off and get away with stuff your first, 40 years, but you better understand what's going to be happening in the second part. So you really need to get on top of it.
So let's talk about with the carnivore strategy, I'm going to pick that up because that's a good one.
Mhm.
There is also fat is very important. And instead of lean cuts of meat, which in the 90s it came out, everything should be low fat, it should be uh,
Yeah, it should be
sugar free,
margarine,
all
in
the things.
fact, you know?
Yeah, you should eat margarine, not butter. I mean, like all these crazy things that we all just adhered to and thought that was the best thing for us. But in all reality, it's protein, it's meat, and it's fatty meat, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah. And butter. Like butter is actually not, I've been dropping my cholesterol with your help and getting my numbers all aligned, dropped my A1C from 6.0 to 5.7, and things are going fabulous. And I eat butter on my steak.
As you should. That's where
Yeah,
it belongs. It belongs on the steak. Yeah.
it does with a little bit of garlic. It's just fabulous. But yeah, so I have switched and I'll eat a ribeye where before I would eat a sirloin or just, or filet mignon. I still eat that occasionally, but I now eat a ribeye where before I couldn't even stand a ribeye. But I'm like, okay, actually, this fat, when it's, cooked just right, it's pretty good and it makes me feel good and I stay fuller longer.
Fat is should be the main source of our caloric intake every day. And when you think carnivore, again, the mistake would be to think, how many giant bites of flesh do I have to eat every day to get enough calories? It'll actually, it won't work. If you eat lean meat, people die eating lean meat diets. It's called rabbit starvation.
Mm,
Um, if the meat you eat is too lean and that's really your main source of food, your body can't break it down. You get really unhealthy. So you really shouldn't have more than 20% of your calories as protein. If that's kind of the magic number, you go above that and you're going to start creating problems for your kidneys and hurt your bone mineralization and things like that. But what we've done in our country is we've created cheap fats. So Cisco or Crisco and seed oils, canola oil, rapeseed oil, soybean oil, it's never been consumed by our ancestors in any way, shape, or form. It's totally like a foreign food creation, and it's loaded with omega sixes. So that gets all loaded into your cells and the membrane of your cells. And so if you're eating the calories from fat, but they're omega six fats, that drives a big inflammatory shift in your body. But if you have grass finished, grass fed beef, sorry, a lot of there's a lot of corn-fed beef snobs out there. Maybe that's just not the best way. It's not the best for the cow, and it might change the flavor a little bit. I'll give you that. But honestly, we have a lot of grass-fed meat in our house, and it tastes pretty good. I would say the chef needs to pivot if it doesn't taste right. It's not the cow's fault. Um,
I like that.
so when you're eating large amounts of processed food and high omega-6 food, you're getting the fat calories, that's true, but you're getting an inflammatory kind of fat. If you eat saturated fat from eggs and butter and beef and even pork and other sources, it gives you the fuel without the omega-6.
That's the
Okay?
trick. Okay.
That's the trick. And if it's a grass-fed animal, then it actually has omega-3s similar to, like salmon coming from a fishing trip in Alaska. So
Hmm.
there's so much value there. Yeah, and you should have about 60 to 70% of your calories as fat. So what that would mean is like you add marrow butter to your steak, you put really good olive oil in your salads, maybe you make sourdough, hopefully you get some of that from time to time, and you put butter and olive oil on your bread. When you have a little side of like gluten-free pasta or whatever, you put butter and olive oil and salt in copious amounts. All the starch should be is a way to carry fat and salt into your body. That's basically the only thing it should be, right?
Right.
So who wants
And
dry pasta or dry toast? That's disgusting,
it really is. I know. And I actually put a little sea salt on if I'll have and I don't have sourdough all that often. I'll have it once a week, maybe just a slice. I don't eat it all the time, but I'll slather it up in butter and sprinkle some sea salt on it, and it's just delicious. So,
That's why they used to say bread, it's my bread and butter,
yeah.
Bread used to taste a lot better before we sell people just really garbage bread and call it bread. So
Yeah, all the processed, heavy processed, and sourdough is the one of the better choices for sure. Homemade sourdough is really awesome if you
yeah.
can stick with
It
that.
weighs, the loaf weighs about 3 pounds. It's dense
Yeah,
and yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. So let's talk about you are like a cellular level kind of guy. What happens on a cellular level with primarily animal protein as fuel or
One of the good,
the fat too? The
yeah,
fat, yeah.
yeah. So it's a carnivore strategy, right? You're eating
Right.
rich. You're eating that cowboy ribeye that you purchased. You're eating, chicken with the skin on, organic, free range chicken, right?
Yeah.
When you eat rich, you actually release GLP-1. So the reason that people eat carnivore and have the carnivore strategy, it's under the keto umbrella. So underneath the keto umbrella, carnivore strategy sits underneath that umbrella because you can only get about 20% of your calories from protein. The rest need to come, you need about 60 or 70% from fat, and the rest should come from arugula and romaine and your tomatoes and the real asparagus and all the really rich dense veggies, but they don't really give you calories. They give you lots of other stuff. Your
Right.
main calorie source is fat. Second to that is the protein. But um yeah, so like the food noise. So what happens is we're eating deficient food grown in deficient soil. So you eat the food and you fill up. You fill the container, your stomach up with adequate amounts of mass. Okay. Pasta. You go to Olive Garden, sorry, picking on you, Olive Garden. And you eat like a salad with soybean oil dressing and some breadsticks and pasta. There's almost no protein in that environment. And so your body goes, I need more protein. And so what it does is it says, okay, in my environment, I've got rice, I've got pasta, I've got wheat. Wheat, it does have some protein in it. Rice does have some protein in it. So your body will overconsume the rice or the starch to get the minimum dose of protein that it needs to run the critical stuff in the background. So when you go towards the carnivore strategy, you're not making the body do that. You're delivering way more protein on a daily basis than your body's had in a long time. And so it doesn't have to crave other things because it's getting all of its needs met with the protein. So you're going to make your neurotransmitters, you're going to make dopamine, you're going to make serotonin. It's going to maintain your muscle, your teeth, your hair, your skin. You know, there's no loss. There's no negative to eating 16 to 20% of your calories as protein. I'll even go so far as to say, even if you're a vegan individual, you would still have to try to eat this way. You would just have to be using protein powder. You'd have to use supplementation or functional foods or something to get the protein amount. Because at the end of the day, I'd say protein is protein. Like whether it came from a giant ribeye or it came from chicken or duck or it came from protein powder. I guess out of those, if you chose protein powder as your choice, that's you, but at least you're getting the macro number in.
Right. Right. Well, and that makes sense. Protein is the most important, and I think that that does. It also makes me remember the days when I would eat pastas and rice and all of that, and I wouldn't be satiated. I would be, oh, okay, now I've had all this, and even though my stomach kind of feels full, but I need something sweet. So then I would want a dessert, or I would want something sweet, or I would eat more than I was supposed to. So now I understand because my body was going, hey, we're not getting enough protein. We need more protein. And so when I'm doing carnivore, I actually I'm not hungry. I'm satiated. I mean, I'm satiated for hours. Like I no longer have to eat every 2.5 to 3 hours. And
Yeah.
I'm waiting to listen to my body to go, okay, now we're getting hungry. Like here's a little growl, or maybe here's a little headache to remind you that you do need to eat. And then I realize, oh, crud, it's been 5 hours. I guess I should eat something. So I should probably be better about that. But I think that that's where I got this idea of, well, I could shut off the food noise naturally by eating more protein. And I guess you're right. It doesn't matter which protein it is. But for me, like I just like a fattier steak or
Mhm.
butter and eggs. I really like eggs. And I used to be an egg hater. I mean, like I've always liked to eat eggs, but I was believed what they said about you can't have more than 3 eggs a, a day, or was it 3 eggs a week? I don't even know, but it's like you're because of cholesterol, because of your heart. And my husband would eat 3 boiled eggs every morning. And I'm like, dude, you are like so gonna die of a heart attack. You need to stop. And then all of a sudden it's like things have been flipped. And now eggs are good for you. And it's okay to have 3 eggs in the morning. It's
Yeah,
okay to have.
there was an experiment. Some guy did an experiment a couple years ago and published it. He was a Harvard researcher, like a younger guy in his late 20s, or he's like a PhD student. He ate like 750 eggs in 1 month. He did like a crazy, he almost ate
Oh,
exclusively eggs. His cholesterol dropped 20%.
see? It's
Hmm.
just backwards.
Well, they don't
Um,
want you to I mean, it's like they want you on the factory farm eating the cheap shit that makes them a ton of money.
yeah,
And eggs are probably nature's perfect food. So yeah, that's your
yeah.
breakfast focus, and then you have, the other foods going on. Another one interesting thing I want to share with your audience is a study came out about 6 weeks ago, right at the beginning of March. And what they did is they looked at people who had the APOE4 gene, the real scary dementia risk, basically. It is an increased risk for dementia. And, people may have had family members go through that. They know how just like, devastating that process is. And so they asked a question. They did a really interesting study and they divided people into 5 groups based on how much protein you eat. So low protein intake, high protein intake. And the high protein intake group ate about 16% of their calories as protein. So that would mean on an average 2,000 calorie diet, if it's 4 calories per gram of protein, um, 10% of, let me do the math here. I think it's about 80 grams of protein a day.
Yeah.
Okay. And that one egg's only 6 grams. So, you got to make an effort to get to 80. And the people that are in the hundreds, they really have to focus on it. But this group in this study that ate 16% of their daily calories as protein had a reduced risk of Alzheimer's that was actually less than people who had the really good genes. So the genetic risk of getting Alzheimer's was totally erased by having a higher protein diet. And I think it's probably twofold. Like the protein helps your brain immensely, but you're also not filling up on trash that hurts your brain because it's inflammatory type stuff. So
Or it's converting into glucose.
sure, giving you type 3 diabetes and blowing up your blood sugar and giving you dementia. So
Right.
protein saves you, you know?
Yeah, 100%. So, why does carbohydrates reintroduction turn the food noise back on for some people? And it does me, but not like I could have a baked potato with a meal, but then the following day, if I and I'm doing, mostly carnivore, but I throw vegetables in here or there. But so I'll do a baked potato. If I were to do another baked potato or another like a high carb vegetable the next day, for some reason that just turns on this cravings thing. And that's when I hear the food noise. I want to eat things but it's because I've had multiple days of eating something that was a carb. Is that a real thing? Is that
I mean,
imagined
I
in my
think it's
mind?
more of an addiction and like a trigger for you know, your brain too. Potatoes are highly glycemic. I mean, again,
Yeah.
depending on how you eat it, if you've got sour cream, butter, chives, and cheese, that's not going to spike your blood sugar like just eating mashed potatoes. There's also an argument to be made that combining a high amount of starches with a high amount of fat and protein isn't really a good idea. It's just not very common in nature. Like if you kill an animal, you feast on the fat and protein, catch a fish, fat and protein, but you don't catch a fish and then at the same time, like have pasta coming out of the, pot at the same time. So when you combine lots of high doses of starch with high doses of protein and fat, it is harder on your body. That's why like asparagus and steak or broccoli and chicken, the broccoli isn't really sugary. It's starch, true, but it's a really resistant starch. It's a complex carbohydrate. So it's different than yams and baked potatoes and pasta and stuff like that. So part of it's just food combining.
Right. So I was watching a YouTube deal that was talking about the liver and how the liver processes, and and I had this thought in my brain of imagining valves. And so when you're eating protein, one valve opens and the other valve closes. And then you get done with your protein, that closes. And then you eat some vegetables and this valve opens. But when you go and feed your body protein and carbs, then the valves don't know what they're doing and your liver doesn't process things correctly. And that's what's feeding your body glucose. Is that right? Or am I totally off?
I mean,
Sounds
I don't think you're totally off. I think it's a difficult process to,
explain.
to summarize in a couple of sentences, but protein will increase insulin. That's not a bad thing about protein. It's just protein will raise insulin because your body needs insulin to push the protein into your cells. So your body goes, hey, I just ate 30 grams of protein. I have to raise insulin to make that protein go into my cells as it goes into my bloodstream and I get it absorbed. So there's maybe just like an additive effect of having a big baked potato and a big steak. You're getting a big insulin dump, and that starts
Mm,
maybe that can mess up your roller coaster of your blood sugar. If you're more fat based, protein plus fat, the fat goes into our cells without insulin at all, right? That's the whole advantage of keto is you can feed yourself without insulin, basically.
right. Nice. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and you have shown um, or you've read some research that shows that carnivore strategy is healthy for our bodies, correct? Because there's a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people out there that fear it, that think, well, you just can't live on fat and meat, and I
Yeah.
don't think they know, all that you're supposed to be eating. Because I do
Right.
cottage cheese and I do cheese and I do eggs. So,
Well, what we're supposed to eat is vitamins, right? So
yeah,
if vitamins are called vitamins because when we don't have them, we get a disease and we die. If we don't have enough B1, we get pellagra. We don't get enough or maybe sorry, that's niacin. If you don't get enough like thiamine, you can have beriberi. I mean, these are diseases that killed a lot of people over the years when our diets weren't optimum. So even in America today, the modern world, you can be malnourished.
right,
It's real easy. I see it all the time, and I think if you think about it from the position of what's in the meal, so there's tons of energy in the fat, and there's a massive amount of protein and vitamins and minerals in these eggs and these carnivore foods. I mean, that's like what my body runs on. It runs on protein and vitamins and fuel, right?
right.
So one thing they have to do if they do this strategy, they have to eat enough salt. So it's like 3 to 4 grams of salt a day is shown to be the optimum space to get into if you're going to be pushing the carnivore strategy and a keto diet, keto lifestyle kind of thing. That's a lot more salt. See, you have to unprogram yourself. They told you salt was bad. They told you meat was bad. They told you were bad. They told you butter was bad. And look where that got us. It got people sicker than human beings have ever been in their life. I mean, in history. So
Yeah. Everybody's overweight, obese, and they have metabolic issues and diabetes and yeah, all the things from this healthier style of eating, which was not true. Like it's not.
if you measure the food with some machine that can tell you how many vitamins are in it, how much quality and densely nutritious it is, nothing comes close to the carnivore strategy. You
Yeah.
know, cows just constant grass has a little bit of nutrition. Cows eat it all day long for a year and a half, and then you have a massive amount of nutrition stored in one place. I think that as people get older, though, Tammy, I think they don't break down protein well, and I think they self-select out of eating it, and that's to their detriment. And if you're that person, there's things you can do. We work with people like you all the time in our practice, but starches break down in your mouth. So when you put a potato or a yam, pasta, breads, cookies, whatever in your mouth, it starts to be broken down. So it's the easiest to absorb out of all three macros.
Mm.
So there's also people have sort of figured out that they don't break things down correctly. And so then they go, well, that hurts my tummy if I eat this rich food. So I'll just eat like this other category of food that's high in starch, but it's not actually what's best for the body. It just means what's easy to digest right now.
That makes total sense. You just described my mother, and I'm always like, Mom, you need to eat your meat. And she's like, no, it's hard to chew. And, she makes up all these excuses. But now this makes sense to me. Like, this
Yeah.
is why she's saying no to the meat because it's not easy to break down and probably does feel quite heavy. So, I mean, I'm sure that you offer things. I know you just said that you work with people all the time with stuff like this. And I know that you helped me with my stomach issues. So I know that what you have to offer is amazing. You've peeled me back like an onion and guided me in all these ways that I just feel like I'm getting better and better, and my body's healthier and healthier along the way. But definitely they could look to you if they're having a hard time processing the protein,
Mhm.
and there's some way that you could help them with that, right?
Well, we found that most people over the age of 45 need to be taking stomach acid.
Right. That's the HCI that I take, right? Because
Mhm.
I that's what I take, and I got off the Prilosec OTC, which was to coat your stomach from acids because they said I had a high acidic stomach and I have a hiatal hernia. I go to you and you've got me off of that in I think it was 4 days I was off of that and never looked back.
Yeah,
So
life is better when your stomach works.
yes, it is. It really is. Well, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you joining us, and hopefully, we'll have you on the show again. We always love to talk about our health on here. At least one episode out of the month, we focus on nutrition, metabolism, all those wonderful things. So, thank you so much.
Thanks, Tammy. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks for having me on.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.